get started. Yeah, I'm an alcoholic. My name is Rick.
We love you, Rick. Lots and lots and lots.
Just as long as you don't try to mess with my fuzzy. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. This is an open meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. There may be some here who are not familiar with our tradition of personal anonymity at the public level. Our public relations policy is based on attraction rather than promotion. We need always maintain personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, and films. Thus, we respectfully ask that AA speakers and AA members not be photographed, videotaped, or identified by full name on audio tapes and in published or broadcast reports of our meetings, including those reports on the internet. The assurance of anonymity is essential in all our efforts to help other problem drinkers who may wish to share our program of recovery with us. And our tradition of anonymity reminds us that AA principles come before personalities. A further note about anonymity. Out of respect for others, please do not take photographs or video during any of the meetings at NCCYPAA. Also be considerate when taking photographs or videos inside and outside of the hotel. Take care that you do not capture images of AA members, family members, and friends who do not give permission and may not wish to appear in your pictures and videos. Please do not post recognizable photos or videos of identifiable AA members on websites accessible to the public, including unrestricted pages on social networking sites. Yay! I got through it. The opinions expressed by the panelists are his or her own and do not necessarily reflect those of NCCCYPAA or Alcoholics Anonymous as a whole. Please be reminded that the lack of profanity offends no one. So, the title of this panel is NCCCYPAA Year 1. We have invited these people to come share their experience, strength, and hope on that topic. These are members of the original NCCCYPAA 1 host committee.
What?
It's pretty cool. I was at the first NCCCYPAA for about 25 minutes. I didn't find anything or anyone I liked, so I booked it. So I don't really have much to say. But it is a pleasure and an honor to be here. We didn't really figure anything else other than I'm going to ask Charlie to start because we hear Richard tell how this got started all the time.
It's Charlie Barnes.
Hey, Charlie. We love you, Charlie. Lots and lots and lots.
I remember the first time I was up in front of y'all and y'all did that to me. It freaked me out so much. How this thing got started, I guess my first experience with the YPAA or anything, it was a Saturday night. It was at the, what was that meeting called? It was the last call meeting. It was a 10 o'clock meeting on Saturday night. And this long-haired hippie dude from Charlotte came in with a couple of his buddies. And they had a stack of flyers with them. And they were outreaching for CircuitPaw in Charlotte in '96. Sterling's not here, is he?
No, he's not here.
Okay. But they talked to us and shook our hands and pumped up this thing, and I'm real grateful for that. I think it's something that we miss today in the world of social media and mass media and stuff like that. Is people actually getting in the car with a stack of flyers going to a different town. But there were 5 of us that went down to Charlotte, and there were 5 of us that went down to Charlotte from Greensboro, and I remember it was and the whole NCCYPAA thing just freaked me out because I was just I was scared. Richard, you want to tell that story?
What story?
The coffee story.
Oh, I can.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm an alcoholic, Richard Hale.
We love you, Richard. Lots and lots and lots.
I love y'all too, man. Yeah, we were at NCCCYPAA and they were talking about the conference and all that. And Charlie was new. I'd been to a couple of young people's conferences. I'd gone to some NCCCYPAAs and prior to going to NCCCYPAA, and Charlie was kind of little. You could see the deer in the headlights look. You know, he's a little scared. He ain't been around that many people sober, so we were like, well, let's get Charlie. We'll get Charlie, get us some coffee. And so we told Charlie, run over there to hospitality and grab some coffee, you know. And so he took off, and we all went and hid. And we just kind of hid behind bushes and trees and stuff in the banister. And Charlie came back with 4 things of coffee, you know. And it was just the expression on his face was like, oh, I don't know what to do with all this coffee. It was just funny. It's just funny to you know, pick on the new guy, break in the new guy.
And he said all that so I could say this. My impression, I was scared to death at the first circuit I went to. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know. I still didn't know how to talk to people. I still didn't know how to talk. That situation has been rectified. But it was Saturday night, and Tom I was the speaker, and I was really thrilled because he came up and talked to me and Richard before the meeting, and I was sure he was going to quote something that I said during his talk, and he didn't. But y'all know how it is on Saturday night. Everybody was full of enthusiasm, and we've been talking kind of all weekend. North Carolina doesn't have a conference, just kind of everybody talking amongst themselves. A whole bunch of us ran out to the pool, and we had our own little chant game out around the pool, doing Nicky, 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 Pa, 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 like 40 different times. And I remember standing there, we were all just jumping up and down, and I was like, what the heck am I getting myself into? And there was some correspondence back and forth between pretty much Greensboro and Charlotte. Maybe a couple people from Raleigh were involved. And it was sometime in August that year. Wasn't it
August 16th of 1996.
August 16th?
Yeah, she was the secretary.
Okay.
Still is.
We had basically a bid meeting in Greensboro, and where they passed out the bidding requirements, and I think we voted advisory council that day, and then we put together a bid in September or October, presented the bids down in Raleigh, and we were fortunate enough to get the first conference. I think it's because one of our presenters cried while she was reading her needs statement that she got to the judges, it was just an incredible experience for me being new in sobriety. I was doing some treatment center work, and I was doing some jail stuff, but it was the first really big service commitment. And being an alcoholic, if you're going to do something, do it all the way. And my sponsor volunteered me for the treasurer position, and the hotel chair, and the fundraising.
The what?
Well, it's called special events now, but it was fundraising back in the day. I just, I think I was in some kind of committee meeting just about every night of the week. It was a huge part of my early sobriety. Was fortunate enough to get to serve on the advisory council for 5 years after that. NCCCYPAA was a big part of my sobriety for the first 6 years that I was around. I remember Ron, I really couldn't talk to people, y'all. all. I was so scared that I would say something wrong. I remember Rob on advisory council used to give me a tough time because I'd never say anything. I was intimidated by all these people. I think by my last year on advisory council, he was sorry that he had made
Make him
that
stand
comment
up.
to me.
Make him stand up.
Rob, stand up. Yeah. Hey, Rob.
He was from Charlotte at the time, so he really was a part of it from the beginning with Richard and Charlie. But since he wasn't on the first host committee, that's why he's not up here.
That's because I still think I lost illegally.
Let the resentment go.
It's been 20 years.
But there's so many relationships that were made in those early years. That even though I don't see some of these guys quite as much, but Rob, Lisa, Chris, I see Richard and Rick too much, but I still feel that closeness that came from doing big time service work together. Some of my best friends that I've got in the program today are people that I've done a lot of service with. So I'm gonna shut up for now. I may talk again later, but somebody else needs to go.
There's a good chance of that.
I'm an alcoholic. My name is Chris Holt.
Hey, Chris! We love you, Chris!
Lots and lots and lots.
Thanks, guys. I like the fist bump at the end. That's a good one. Yeah.
Double X, baby.
I don't think I've been to one of these maybe like 8 or 9 years. It's been a minute. I haven't, like Charlie was talking about, I've always felt a closeness to the people that I was on this first host committee with, even though I don't see them a lot. I haven't seen, Rob and Lisa and Charlie in a long time. I see Richard from time to time, but he's kind of like chicken pox you had when you were a kid. Once you've been with him once, he's in your system forever. And when you get old, he's probably going to come back as shingles. I got sober in Connecticut when I was 16, and I moved to Greensboro, went to UNCG when I was about 2 years sober. And I got there, and I was in one of the high-rise dorms on UNCG campus, and my roommate immediately started pledging a fraternity, and the guys across the hall from me were the biggest potheads in the dorm. And so I was like in the lion's den, and I'm a couple years sober and don't know a single person here, and I went to my first meeting at the Unity Club, and I did what my sponsor told me to do, and I raised my hand and I said, I just moved here, I don't know anybody, I'd like to meet some people and hopefully get some phone numbers and etc. And then the meeting ended, and I waited for the bum rush of people that were going to welcome me into the community. This one girl walked up to me and started chatting with me, and she had 30 days and was asking me out for something, and I was like, this is not what I was hoping. This is not what I envisioned. But the next meeting, I think it was maybe Dave B approached me and said, hey, we just decided to put on this AA convention here, you want to help? And I think this was just after you guys had won the bid, and I was like, sure. I've got no idea what that's about. I'd been to an AA, a big people's AA convention in Connecticut, but I'd never been to a young people's. I didn't know what was going on with that. But I was like, sure, what's up? So we started having meetings, and none of us had any idea what we were doing. Some of us pretended pretty well, but none of us really knew what we were doing. None of us really had much experience. I volunteered to be the speaker chair, to get the speakers, because I figured that was less work than some of the other jobs. But I had no idea, how to do it or what to do. I used to listen to a lot of speaker tapes back when they were tapes, and that's the most hipster A thing I've ever said. But I would listen to these speaker tapes, and I just started dialing for dollars and calling these people to come speak at this convention, and I took some big swings at getting some speakers that were on like the national speaking circuit and spoke at a lot of conventions, and we got a couple of them to come and speak at this first year young people's convention here. We had some really good talks come out of that. I remember Saturday night, you would have been able to hear a pin drop when Keith L spoke, except for half the room was sobbing. Like, it was one of the most powerful talks I've heard ever in Alcoholics Anonymous. It was so good, and everybody else that spoke that weekend did a fantastic job. There was like an energy in the air that I haven't felt many times in Alcoholics Anonymous the entire convention. Everybody was just like stoked to be there. But what I can tell you was that, for me personally, the convention was great, but it was all the stuff that led up to it that made all the difference in the world for me personally. We would get in the car and road trip down to Charlotte or to Chapel Hill or to Raleigh and show up at any young people's meeting we found on the schedule and be like, hey, we're doing this thing, come, and we'd go out to eat with people after the meeting we stopped at, and like we got to know people all over the state. I got to be great friends with Rob and his brother Craig, and we'd go down and hang out with those guys like every other weekend, and get in all kinds of trouble. And
Great.
yeah, we have fun. And we had to do a lot of fundraising because it was our first one, and we would do rafting trips and cookouts and camping, and it was just there's a line in the book about watching the fellowship grow up about you, and that was what NCCYPAA did for me in service through NCCYPAA. It absolutely kept me sober through one of the most difficult periods of my sobriety, and also like truly enriched my life during that time. It wasn't just like getting by and not drinking. I really felt like I was living life to the fullest the entire period, and I'm really grateful for that. I'm gonna kick it to Lisa.
Thanks, Chris.
I'm Lisa, I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Lisa. We love you, Lisa. Lots and lots and lots. Bunches.
Back when I was going to the young people's conferences, after the whole bunches part, we'd say, honest to God. I don't know why that kind of got added on. Now seems like you've added on some other stuff. But it evolves, so it's interesting. I was 20 years old when I got sober in Greensboro, and I was going to the Unity Club, and I got my year sober when I was I just turned 21 right before my 1 year sobriety, so that was like a critical time because then I could legally drink, and that obviously wasn't a problem before. But here I was, it was kind of a critical point, and it was right around that time when people started talking about NCCYPAA, and we had a group of people from Charlotte, one of which is now my husband, who came to, and also Greensboro, who came and started talking up this young people stuff, and just started hearing about it. And I think what was critical for me was to know that you could be sober and have fun and be young. And we were a minority, and I think still are a lot of times, the young people in meetings. And it was nice to hear. It's like, what is this all about? So I just kind of easily got drawn into wanting to find out what this young people thing was all about. And there, next thing you know, there was this meeting talking about, well, maybe Greensboro could form a committee to get the conference, and I didn't know what any of that was about. And I'm like, okay, sure. And there's a meeting for elections, and Matt S. He was also a younger person at that time, and I was hoping he was going to be here today. But he had a couple years clean and sober at that point, and he had said he just specifically talked to me and said, you know, I think you'd be really good to hold a position. And I was just like, me? Me? I mean, I just felt totally inadequate. I was like, I don't know anything about this. But just the fact that he, you know, he believed in me, somebody believed in me. And I was like, it gave me the courage to say, okay, sure. So when I was nominated for a position, I accepted it, totally feeling like I didn't know what I was gonna be doing. But it was kind of the beginning to just getting involved. And next thing you know, I pretty much kind of lived in NCCYPAA. I was, everything, I ate, breathed, sleep, NCCCYPAA. All my friends were involved with NCCCYPAA. We were constantly, had a different kind of committee meeting almost every night of the week. We were, at that point, I didn't know what else to do. So I think it was the first time learning that we could have fun, and we had dances, and we were dressing up for Halloween parties, and we were constantly raising money. I don't know if you guys still do the pie contest, but that was the thing at the time where you're paying money to see somebody get a whipped cream pie in the face, and that was a way to raise money. Woohoo! But it didn't take much at those days. But it was fun. There was always, and again, it was a little bit pre-social media and all that stuff, so we literally were traveling across the state. So we got to know the young people in every city, that whether it be Wilmington, Chapel Hill, Raleigh, and really had a network that made me feel a part of something. And and I also was on the advisory council for a number of years, and I kind of learned how to be a person, how to grow up. I grew up in NCCCYPAA, and kind of a side story, which is a little bit, something else, but my Rob, who Charlie mentioned before, he was a part of the Charlotte group, I was part of the Greensboro group, and we kind of met, during those first days, and he wound up asking me out on the very first NCCCYPAA in Greensboro 20 years ago. And he's like, I like you, you like me, that kind of thing. But doing it sober, we were like, okay, this is kind of weird. I hadn't been in a relationship, sober relationship, and they tell you to stay away from that for the first year and all that stuff. So we kind of started our relationship after doing it the right way, and after being clean and meeting, through this program. And we've been married for 16 years since, have 2 children.
Yeah.
And you're right. So it's, and I definitely attribute that to NCCCYPAA. I wouldn't be here if, I don't know where I would have been in those early days, if I would still be here, if I didn't have the foundation that NCCCYPAA provided. Because I could have easily started to feel like I didn't belong and just gone back out. So it drew me in and pulled me in. And at that time, we caught a lot of flack from the old timers, and they were like, that's a specialty group, and that's separate from AA. And I feel like we convinced them too that it was good and that was needed. So either way, so I'm glad to be here, and glad it's still going on, and hope it's doing the same thing for each year for you guys.
Thanks, Lisa.
I already did the I'm Richard, I'm an alcoholic.
Yeah, we did that part.
We don't have to do it again. Unless there were some people that came in late. So I'm an alcoholic. My name's Richard.
We love you, Richard.
Honest to God.
There you go.
Man, I love y'all too. It's so cool, man, to be here today, and life goes on. We get sober, and we get and life goes on, and life's been amazing, But to think about when the conference came back to Greensboro, and that where you're going to do this panel, it's like, man, to think back, it's like I'm looking through the photo album that Rob and Lisa brought up. I'm like, good God, Charlie had hair. I'm not kidding, y'all. There's pictures in here. Charlie had hair. You know, Chris did not have facial hair. I mean, he looked like
He looked like he was 12.
Lisa hadn't aged. I mean, so it's a program of miracles for sure. You know what I'm saying? And NCCYPAA, man, is just, you know, it's special to me. I'll tell you this. There are people here today that put on this conference for 2016. They're wearing those little gray shirts. Y'all stand up.
Woohoo!
If you're on the host committee, stand up. You guys have done an amazing job. It's been awesome to be a part of that. You know, I feel honored just to witness the things you've done. We didn't know what the hell we were doing when we, you know, I don't even know what I did back then. I can't remember. I think I did a little bit of all of it. I just ran around, you know, and it's.
You were the fuzzy master.
What do you got?
You were the fuzzy master.
What's a fuzzy?
A what?
Do you have one of them?
You ever heard of warm fuzzies? Yes.
I picked up
He'll
some.
tell you about
I picked up some addictions since I came to AA. Coffee drinks. Is that a warm fuzzy in your cup?
I think it's one that fell apart. Run away. It's a, you know, it's one. This is a warm fuzzy.
That's not a warm fuzzy. That's a warm fuzzy. If you don't know what a warm fuzzy is, what this thing is it's a ball of yarn. Some people know about it. Some people have been here a while. Been going to pause. And when we hold these conferences,
You'll wear it around your neck.
you put it around your neck like that with the little ball of yarn at the end. And we'd see other people at our conference, you know, and that's how we recognized other people were at the Young People's Conference. They had a ball of yarn. And so when you saw each other, you'd exchange a hug.
And then you pull one out.
She pulls out one of her yarns and she would tie it onto mine.
There you go, for old time.
I would take off one of mine and tie it onto her. It was kind of a new way to tie one on. You know what I'm saying? And so I got addicted to coffee drinks and hugs and Alcoholics Anonymous, especially in YPAs, and changed my life for sure. You know, to think about the panel, man. It's true. I don't see Rob and Lisa that much unless I'm stalking them on Facebook, and Chris, Charlie, I run into because he's in Greensboro. Matt was my sponsor. He's not here. He was originally supposed to be on the panel. If Matt had made the panel, we'd have had about 110 years sobriety up here, I think, which is crazy to think about that. That is amazing, you know. I didn't think these three would make it.
Don't worry, Richard, we thought the same.
I know, man. I know. But because I think back to the original committee, man. You know, looking through this album, especially, you know, it's kind of like it's crazy, man. I'm getting goosebumps, man. I'm tearing. I'm getting emotional. Some of these folks are dead. You know, they were young when they came here, and they were on our committee, and they drank again, or they used, and they're gone. You know, they're gone. Some of them are still around, alive. They're just not involved in AA, I guess. You know, I don't see them that much. Some of those first committee meetings we had, we would fight, we would cry. You know, it's crazy to think about the relationships, though. What I know about my relationships today with folks like this is that it doesn't matter what's going on in my life. I pick up the phone and I call any of them, and they'd be there. And I hope they know that works the same way. If they picked up the phone and called me, I'd be there. You know, and that's what YPAA did. That's what AA gives me. You know, what I heard when I came here was create the fellowship you crave. Right? And when I went to that first international conference in New York, you know the thing we did to Charlie and Charlotte, they did that to me in New York. I went and got coffee and I came back and none of them were there and I was just standing there. And it's kind of like, I think it was Holly at our Red Ball meeting Thursday who said something about feeling uncomfortable coming to a YPA if you're here for the first time and you're kind of standing there by yourself. And what happened for me was I did what Jim said, because I would follow Jim around at that conference like a puppy. I was 9 months sober, and I was scared. There was like 5,000 people at that conference, and I was scared, man. I was anxious. I didn't know what to do. And Jim would look at me and say, "Go away. Get away from me. I know you. Go meet some people." And then he said, "Go get the coffee," and I come back, and nobody's standing there. That I knew. But I went and talked to somebody else. And that's, Holly brought that up. If you're at this conference and you're kind of standing off by yourself, find somebody else who's standing off by yourself and get with them and talk, and all of a sudden you're not alone anymore. And that's how the fellowship grew for me, as I started meeting people at these YPAs, man. And I've met people from all over not just the state of North Carolina, but the country, the world. You know, Chris and Alexis, I met them at the NCCYPAA, you know, and we have a relationship that, man, it's like, I don't see them but once a year, you know, unless you get them to come speak at your conference. And then you get to see them twice a year, you know, which is a bonus, because I love these guys. You know, they're like family, man. I don't see them but once a year, but we stay in touch, and I have a relationship that is like, it's cemented, man. You know, I know that today. So getting involved has been just, you know, for me, it's been that thing that it talks about, you know, we want to get into that fourth dimension, right? We want to be rocketed. I mean, the YPAs is part of that rocket ride for me. I mean, that's where I got fired up for not just YPAs, but Alcoholics Anonymous, period, man. You know, some things that happened to me because of YPAs, like I came back from that international conference, right? And I'd been to a men's meeting up there. Like 3,000 men in a men's meeting in New York and Manhattan during that international conference in 1993. And I came back to Greensboro, and I was like, man, I want to get involved in a men's meeting. And this old guy who'd been sober like longer than Santa Claus said, "Oh, I go to a men's meeting on Wednesday nights. Just meet me at the Unity Club, and we'll go to the meeting." I said, "Cool." So I met him at the Unity Club, right? And we went to a prison. You know? It was a men's meeting. And I got involved in corrections because of my YPAA connection, you know. There's so many avenues that open up when we get involved. And you know, if you're looking for something to get involved in, man, get involved in the YPAA if you get it in your city, you know. All I know is all I think it can do is strengthen your recovery, man, you know. Me and Charlie, it's like we didn't have the internet back then, or maybe they did. I just wasn't old enough to be on the computer, according to my parents. And I was 30. I lived in their basement. Like where all good drunks live when they're 30, in their parents' basement, right? But you know, I'd come up out of that basement, and I'd hop on my little 2-pedal moped, and I'd scoot over to the club, and I'd meet up with Charlie. Because Charlie'd had a car, you know. And I was, I think I was 2 or 3 years sober, a little longer than Charlie. I'd say things like the old guys used to say to me, "Shut up and get in the car," right? And I'd go over there and meet Charlie and say, "Shut up, let me in your car." And then we'd go outreach, you know. It's like Chris talked about, and Lisa, you know. We didn't outreach on Facebook page. That's cool. I mean, it's awesome. Technology's a blast. I mean, I've enjoyed growing with it. But then, you know, some of the best times I ever had in my recovery were hopping in the car and driving to a city, Wilmington or Raleigh or Charlotte or Asheville, you know, and having those conversations, you know, and listening to AA tapes, CDs. I think we did migrate into the CD era.
Yeah.
You know, we'd listen to those tapes and listen to CDs and talk and come meet people, and we started creating that fellowship we craved, man. And it's been amazing to me to be a part of that, man. I don't know, you know, maybe I'd be sober if I hadn't never went to that young people's conference. You know, Rob shaking his head, nah, probably not. Maybe I would be. I don't worry about it because that didn't happen. My journey took me through a YPAA, and as a result of that, my life's been freaking amazing, man. There are so many folks in this room, man, that I've met over the years coming in. I love NCCYPAA, man. I love our Young People's Conference. I love Greensboro's Young People AA, man. It's solid, you know. And I get to meet so many of y'all, man. I may not forget I may forget your names for a little while until I see them on the name badges over the years, you know. Now I got this nice cell phone. I can snap a picture of it, go home and memorize it, you know. But I've met so many, Monica, you know, Jessica back there, you know, Kimberly. I've seen, you know, people come here and you get to watch them grow, man. And watch their lives take off, you know, and to know that we've all had a part in that. Chris, man, from Wilmington, you know, that we've all been kind of entwined, man, in each other's lives as we stay here, you know, and we participate in the growth of life, you know. I'm so grateful for that because I've had times when I needed y'all. I needed to really lean on y'all, and you were there. And there's been people that have needed us, and you know, we're not all better on the same day. Some of us don't do as well on certain days, but we keep coming here, you know, and there are people here that can help us, you know. Man, I didn't get that. I think people outside of recovery tried to give it to me, but I was unable to accept it until I almost died from drinking and came here, you know, under that lash and under that delusion, like is our theme, you know, the delusion that I could be like other people or presently might be, had to be smashed. You know what I'm saying? Until I got here and became willing to listen and do some things different. And life just took off, man. And today I'm not under a delusion. I am presently like y'all. And it's a beautiful thing. My life's a beautiful thing. I know a lot of y'all's lives are beautiful. And if you haven't got there yet, just keep showing up. Stay here. You know, I'm not a fan of keep coming back. If you're here, stay. Stay. You know, because I need you. It doesn't matter how long I've been here, I still need you. You know, and it's just been an awesome journey, man. We still have some conference going on. We got some more really good speakers coming up here tonight, man. Tomorrow, Chris is on deck, 10 a.m. I know a lot of y'all don't like to get up that early, but look how big that dude is. I will give him your room numbers. No, seriously, man. There's still so much power in some messages that are going to be presented to us. I know personally I don't want to miss it, so I'm going to be here. I'm going to do what I did since that first day when they said suit up and show up. You know, I'm going to continue to suit up and show up because I love what I've been given in this program, and by God's grace, you know, thank y'all so much for my life, man. And come look at this photo album. Y'all want some laughs? Come look at that photo album. Unbelievable.
Yeah, what was your hair?
Questions or anything?
Oh.
And it was
You see
red.
that?
We're gonna do questions?
Did you want to come back?
Questions? Anybody got any questions?
Actually, Richard and Lisa brought up a couple of things that, you know, we talked a lot about young people's. You know, and Lisa mentioned that we did get a lot of pushback from some of the old timers, but I guarantee it would not have been as successful as it was that first year if it wasn't for a few
That's right.
old timers that were incredibly supportive. I remember Mike Clements. I remember Lisa. Lisa had this box that she carried around with her to just about every meeting that had the flyer for this upcoming
I was
special
the annoying
event.
person
And-
that when they said
Yeah.
you have an announcement.
yeah, they'd say, "Did anybody have announcements?" Everybody in the room would look at Lisa. And but Mike, you know, we'd take some of these flyers up to Mike, and Mike would make sure that every home group in town, when they came to get their books or they came to get whatever,
That's right.
Mike would make sure that they had flyers for NCCYPAA, so we got spread around not just to young people's, but to a lot of the I hate calling them old peoples because I am one now. But got spread around to a lot of the meetings other than just the young people's meetings. And if it wasn't for their support and their guidance, and mainstream Alcoholics Anonymous as a whole, I don't believe that I'd still be sober today. I remember it's one of the questions Advisory Council used to ask all the time when we were doing bids. I don't know if they do anymore. I haven't been to a bid session in a few years, but I remember Advisory Council asking, after all the questions about the conference, they'd ask the people who were presenting to say, okay, other than young people's, what other areas of service are you involved in? Are you going to the prisons? Are you going to the jails? Are you involved? Do you have a position in your home group? Are you active in your home group? And sometimes at these things, young people's is great, but I got to remember it's a celebration of our sobriety. What got me and kept me sober was the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, and the guidance from some of the old timers. And I really thank the people like that, because when we'd have a committee meeting, we couldn't afford to have it at the Unity Club, and none of us had a place big enough to have them, so we'd always have to find an old timer who had a house that was big enough for us to have the committee meetings in. And I remember there was a lot of I don't think he's here, Scott S. Still around in Greensboro. He was here last night. There was more NCCYPAA business that was conducted around his glass table in his dining room than just about anywhere in town. Mike Clements, Gordon R. was at just about every one of our events, and I'm really thankful for those guys because they kind of gave us, at least for me, they gave me something to shoot for. A little bit more mature sobriety, because I was crazy back in the day. A little bit now still too, but I didn't know what was going on, and that was the cool thing about that first year. I think for me was none of us knew what was happening, but it still got done. And it's kind of like Alcoholics Anonymous. It's you got one alcoholic who can't stay sober. His next thought is probably wrong, and he's helping another alcoholic who can't stay sober, and his next thought is possibly wrong. And somehow they stay sober together and have and lead a productive life. And it was really cool to watch that happen that first year. I ain't got nothing else. Y'all said it all.
Brad, we're going to do a little bit of questions. But first, Rob, do you have a question for anyone on the panel?
Oh, no.
Do you want to bring up your argument?
No, it's not really an argument. I mean, I was on the advisory council, and then I stepped down so I could put on the bid for the host committee for Charlotte, which went up against Greensboro for the first year, and I still think it was rigged, so yeah. I figured after 20 years, somebody might tell me the truth.
No.
Here.
Do a full
Does anybody on the panel have a question for somebody on the panel?
I got a question back here, Chuck, an alcoholic.
We love you, Chuck.
How many different, I'm 59 years old, outside like Gateway, AA, or Gateway, and there's a couple other programs. Is all that information at the back table, or is there something you could share with me about that?
What program?
Thank you for your question. If you have any specific questions about your own personal, where you're going to go and what you're going to do, we would love to talk about that with you after the meeting. We're going to try and stick on this format and this topic because we are running out of time. Yes, please.
I'm an alcoholic named Richard.
We love you, Newton. Lots and lots and lots.
I don't have a question. I just wanted to hear it. No, Actually, I was out at the National AA Archives workshop a couple of weeks ago in Northern California, and Billy actually was one of the primary speakers. You're going to hear a great story tonight. But they have, I mean, they've got 50 years of YPAA in that part of the country, and they are very involved with their local archives as well. And they've got a lot of history of the YPAA in Northern California in their AA archives. And you were talking about, you know, being part of AA in general. I'm not aware of anything that we've got in our archives about NCCYPAA. And before you all get too old and senile and can't remember anything, I would really appreciate any of you or all of you putting some of this down on paper.
We
and
have all of
sending
it.
to archives so that it can be there for
We have
future
everything.
generations. Because hopefully this is going to go on for many, many years. So.
I nominate Lisa.
Yeah, we have it all.
We used to cart around in our attic every year's worth of T-shirts and mugs, and as far as since Rob and I were, and Charlie and Chris were on the original advisory council, every meeting minute, every document, every anything, we've got saved.
So that's probably a little more than. Well, really, that's wonderful. I'm glad that you have enough NCCYPAA archives at previous YPAA events. But just kind of what you all talked about here today, you know, your individual recollections of how it got started and the people, and the, you know, humorous events and what Richard was really like and all that kind of stuff is really good to be saved, because there, you really, I hate to say it, but you will pass away.
Thank you.
Thank you. Was there a question down here?
Tom.
Tom.
I'm Tom, I'm an alcoholic.
Hi.
That's awesome. So at the first conference, I was wondering how many people were there. And I remember I was listening to how you outreach, and I'm trying to get involved with like a local YPAA, and I was just like curious to think of, or curious to see how you guys really thought that you got that many people to your conference, and how many people were at that first conference.
Oh, so many.
And do you think that it was just like how'd you guys outreach? So how did you outreach?
Well, we didn't have cell phones. We didn't have, I mean, everything was paper and in person. So either paper, literally, you know,
Yeah.
you announce it at every meeting I went to for a year. Every single one. I mean, even if it was like a year away or 2 days away. Go, what do you mean?
But did everyone on the council, I forget what you guys call it, it's called a council, did all of you guys like pitch in for outreach, or did you have a specific like 2 dudes?
No, I think we all took,
had
we
to
all,
do- yeah. We actually made plans, like even though there was a core committee that was outreach, everybody had to be a part of it. Like if you were going out of town, then you were going to have to outreach in that town. Or at that time I remember we didn't know anybody from Fayetteville. We wanted to target Fayetteville, so we're like, we're making a special trip to Fayetteville. I'm going to stay overnight, and literally would write down anybody's numbers, anybody's email, and everything was all on paper. We had these lists of names and would just send out emails or make phone calls and drive. And also have events. We would always have an event that was going on to tell somebody about to come to, whether it be like a rafting trip or a dance or a cookout or whatever. And so it wasn't only spreading the word about the conference, but come to our event and get to know us. And then you spread the word too, and it just multiplied.
I would say, to answer your question about how many people were there,
Yeah.
I would say probably in the ballpark of 150 for most of the event.
I think it was over 300.
The Saturday night speaker meeting is probably
Yeah.
300.
Three-
And a
320
lot of
or
that
about.
was,
Right, Rob?
it wasn't filled with young people. It was filled with a lot of people from the mainstream AA community in Greensboro specifically that every member of that host committee reached out to by going to groups and making relentless announcements and personally asking, you know, hey, can you come and can you bring your sponsees? Like, we need bodies. Come on. We had at least one treatment center bring a bunch of people because we outreached the treatment centers. So we were trying our best to get the word out in every possible way we could. And it, you know, it wasn't like, let's throw up a Facebook group and see what happens. You know, it was like, let's put boots on the ground and go talk to people and drag them.
And I think,
You know,
I
it
think
worked.
the Young at Heart thing was, we really clung to that a lot, especially being early, you know, people not having heard of YPAWs in this part of the country as much. Say, for anybody who was like, well, that's not for me, or I'm too old. We were just Young at Heart, Young at Heart, Young at Heart. That if in spirit, you don't, it's not about age, it's not about a number. And I think that broke down some of the barriers with getting different people to come.
And the cool thing about all of it is what sprouted from the first conference committee is now, you know, we do beach blast, you know, we do camp outs, you know, there's all sorts of things to help get other people involved and just to know that, man, there's an opportunity to have a good, sober, fun life outside of Alcoholics Anonymous. You know, there's things, and so those other events have been awesome, right? And I personally thought that number was low. I thought there was like thousands at that first conference.
It was a small room.
No.
Figure. Thank you, Tom.
I'm going to ask a couple questions. Anybody in the room who's ever served on a host committee, raise your hand. Look at that.
Boom. Talk to one another.
Ever. Thank you. Anybody who's ever served on a bid committee? Anybody? Ever. Now let's just do fun. Who's ever been to NCCYPAA? Who is going to serve on a host committee next year? Let's see him. Well, there you go. There you go. All right, so the kids, they're doing NCCYPAA 40, right? Yeah. Cade, Naowen, and Allie. Yeah, all of those. I want to thank you guys, not just for serving on this panel, but I mean, not really, but kind of for all of it. Thank you. So that's we come to the end of our meeting. For those of you who will you please just stand where you are, grab somebody's hand. We'll probably come down here, and we'll do the serenity prayer. All right. Let's take a moment of silence for anybody who needs one. God,
grant us the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, the courage to change the things that we can, and the wisdom to know the difference.